I think we're on.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Those of you in the temple, those of you joining us online. We'll start our morning with a 1-hour meditation, or maybe 50 minutes. We'll stop and we'll take a few minutes break, and then we'll come back for questions and answers. So all of those questions that flow through your mind while you're meditating, hold on to them. And I hope you can all feel perfectly comfortable asking or submitting those questions. I'm not sure how that happens when the time comes, but somebody here will let us know. So we have a hybrid group today, which is great. Those of you who came, very nice to be meditating together. So let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru Deva, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, great masters, infuse us with your energy. Help us to do all that we need to do to keep our energy uplifted, to meet you with our hearts, our minds, and our consciousness. Fill us with your love, that our hearts remain open, and that we see every possible way to share your love into this world. We are thine, Mother. We are longing to come home. Please show us the way. Om, peace. Amen.
Dive deep in the sea, for thy pearls of love from thy deathless sea. Today my mind has life deep in thee. If I find not, I will not blame the sea. I will
Let's take a few moments now to end our meditation with healing prayers. Let's particularly this morning hold in our mind all of those in and around the crisis in Afghanistan. Just to open our hearts to them. Let's hold the knowing that there can be a world where people can love each other, respect each other. Let's pray that those people who have been displaced and who are in danger will be welcomed and helped by anyone who's in a position to do that, but that at the very least they feel that they are being cared for by all of us. Let's also bring to mind all of those who are being affected right now by the wildfires throughout California. Let's pray for the people in Lake Tahoe and all over the state, really. Again, that they feel cared for and supported. And then bring to mind those that you know to be in need of healing energy. Imagine them being surrounded by God's love, by God's healing presence, and with the knowledge that we have it within us to send healing vibrations that can reach all around this planet and touch people's hearts. Let's pray together. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent. Thou art in all Thy children. Manifest Thy healing presence in all bodies, minds, and souls. Let's rub our hands together, and Sai Ganesh will lead us in 3 ohms as we send this vibration out around the entire globe. Om Shanti, Shanti, Amen. Let's take a 5-minute break and then come back and see what kind of wonderful spiritual discourse we'll have. Okay, oops, very loud. I think we're back now and we can move forward with any questions that you have. I'm not sure if there are people joining us online. How is it that they would ask questions? Okay, in the chat box, if you have any questions, and then Sai Ganesh or Lakshmi will read them to me. Okay, so we can begin. If anyone in the temple has a question, I think you would come up to this microphone, is that correct? And just adjust it a little so it hits you about here, and feel free to come on up and start. Mm-hmm.
So my question is that when we are thinking about Seva at Ananda, it's usually centered around the temple and the activities, to support the courses and stuff that we do. Why don't we think as a community of serving outside our community when there's so much need? Like you mentioned the Afghan refugees, for example, that is an example, there's a bunch of refugees coming into Modesto. They have needs and stuff. So I've seen other organizations do that, like the Sai Baba organization, and they're very, very well knit. They come together, the act of serving together it bonds you, and we have so much joy that we get from here. I don't know if we have a channel to give back as much as what we receive.
That's a very good question. Can I assume that everybody heard that? Okay, very good. Swamiji was actually asked this question one time, why are we not doing, I will expound on it more than what I'm about to say, but he was asked, why aren't we doing other work, like to help feed people, help the homeless, and I mean, it just goes on and on. It's sort of like how we pray today. Right now you can feel, I have no idea how connected any of you are with the world. I know there are many people who choose not to watch the news, not to know a lot about what's happening. Boy, you'd really have to be in a complete seclusion right now, I think, to not know certain things, some of which I mentioned in our healing prayers. Like, how could we not be praying for all of the people in Afghanistan? Shri mentioned refugees. Of course, there's refugees from many other countries as well. And when I look at the devastation just not that far from us and realize the potential of what's about to keep happening with these fires, and without any sense of where there's an end to it, how far could those fires burn, and how many people are displaced and have nothing, literally have nothing. So it feels to me impossible to know these things and so much more and not feel it in our hearts. But when Swamiji was asked why we're not really putting our energy specifically behind doing this work, he said in essence that the work, that what Master has asked us to do, not that Master ever said don't help everybody who needs help, but that the way that would come through these communities would be through all of what we're doing for ourselves and the world, very directly with spiritual upliftment. And he said an interesting thing. He said, if the world could receive, I'm paraphrasing this, but I think that I'm giving you the essence of what he meant whenever he said what he said, because I don't have those words immediately available. But the more people that we can help learn to meditate learn to get closer to God, open our hearts. All of what we do on this path, all of what we're teaching, in every course, in every answer, that's to every question, that the problems that other people are meant to solve, the ways that people are meant to serve, but he simply said those issues would no longer exist. That our work is to really try and share with as many people as we can that vibration that in and of itself would preclude terrorism, hunger. It's a very deep teaching when you tune into it, so that if we took a certain amount of energy and we sent a certain percentage of Ananda people out into the world to help the refugees, and then we took other people and we had them go and just set up kitchens to feed people, or we built homes, or any of the things that have to happen, it would really dilute and lessen the power behind what it is that we're doing that's at an energetic and vibrational level. Now, having said that, which is simply true, the more people that each of us, one by one, can help share Master's teachings and raise the vibration of energy throughout this globe, that's ultimate healing. It is. But having said that, obviously, I think about this a lot because in India, where they're doing this widows project, and I forget the name of it, but it's in Vrindavan. It's beautiful work. It's all based on these teachings. It is. I mean, so we're helping all of those women, and all of the people who come to help are meditating. Many of them are becoming Kriyabans. It's infused with all of that. Yet at the same time, they're being educated, housed, fed. So I think when the call comes, it's the right thing to do. And for any of us, if we feel inspired in those ways, we should be doing that. We can join any group that that's serving in those ways. And you're right, it's incredible bonding. I've done it. We were just talking, some friends and I, we were hiking together, and we were talking about earthquakes. And when the earthquake happened here in 1987, and some of you weren't even alive, but I mean, it was a big earthquake. And there was a lot of damage up in San Francisco, particularly right along where the yacht club is. I forget what that area is called. And we all know, I mean, the Bay Bridge collapsed. There was hurt and pain, and people were in need. And I immediately got in my car and drove up to San Francisco, which took me literally almost a day, because the whole infrastructure around here was damaged. And I camped out up there for several nights and just took care of people. People didn't have their medicines, they didn't have their houses right there, clothing. But they needed somebody also, not just because I was a physician and I could serve, but they needed somebody who was constantly chanting Om, who was constantly reminding them that they were going to make it through this and that everything would be okay. To bring our energy there, I did 95% of that and this much medicine. So I think we all have so much to bring, and wherever we feel inspired to bring it, we should, but always with that intention behind it. If we're feeding people, we're feeding them not just food, but we're feeding them from our hearts. If we have the possibility that we teach people wherever we are, Hong Sa. I mean, that we infuse what we do with a vibration that very few people on this planet still are paying attention to. So we need to be very mindful not to get sidetracked by what our job is as disciples of this great master. On the other hand, we need to definitely go where we're called. I think that's important. But Ananda as a community, as a worldwide community in general, will not do that. Now, would we ever not step up and help? If there were an earthquake right here, we'd open our community. We'd be serving people in any way we could. We'd never put a gate around our farm so that it's just for us. We would never behave that way. But we need to keep our energy focused. You know, I'm just going to talk for a moment. I don't know how many more questions will come in. But it's an interesting thing I was thinking this morning. What would I talk about if nobody asked the question? Because it's always a possibility. And I have no idea. I'm sitting here. Are there 2 people watching us, or are there 50 people watching us? I don't need to know. And even many times, these people, all of us, we tune in, but we're afraid to ask questions. And I was thinking about, and it's relevant right now, so I'll say it. We're at such an interesting moment. Of course, we all know this. In our lives, we happen to be here during, everything that I've mentioned, but this pandemic. And of course, there's no accidents for each one of us. It's meaningful that we're here during the pandemic. And we've all been so secluded in many ways. And for better or for worse, it's allowed the possibility of energy to drop. It is. I've mentioned this with many people one-on-one, and to the person, they've said to me, when I've used the word, about not just complacent, but how lazy we can all get. Sitting at home, cameras on or off. I've said it before, but now I'm saying it. It'll go up on a YouTube channel. You know, dressed only from the waist up, stopping when you want to get coffee. It's not the same energy as being present here, focused. But right now, what it takes from us, and it comes to mind because when we think about all of the ways that we could be serving, all of the ways right now, takes a lot of focus and conscious, concentrated, there's a word that I want, but conscious is the best word, to raise our energy and to bring it back into the world. Not just asking ourselves, what do I need? This was the genius. Many of you weren't as aware as I was, if you were even alive, when Kennedy was president. But he said some magnificent things. And one of the things that he said was, ask not what my country can do for me, ask what I can do for my country. And that's lived on long after him. But I think about it now because we all need to be asking not just what's the community going to do for me? What are the leaders going to do for me? What are the classes going to do? Anything. But even in terms of serving, Shri, what does the community need from me right now? What difference does it make to everyone if I show up when I can, when it's safe, when I feel comfortable, given that there's a pandemic, taking good care of myself, or what can I bring, not just what's coming. When I say it, it will sound so obvious to everybody, but it's a challenge to people to come back energetically. Not everyone who isn't coming because they're concerned about the pandemic. So we have to say to ourselves, how do I tune in again and get very clear what's needed through me? What can I channel? And in some ways, I think it really fits in with what you're asking, because we do all need to serve in the ways that we're called to serve. It's different for each of us. But what's the same for each of us is that we're disciples of these masters. Wherever we go, with our families in any way that we can, with our work, certainly in our seva, that we are allowing them to serve through us. I hope that answers your question in some way.
Good morning, and thank you, Shanti Ma. My question is about feelings. And I've started noticing a little bit more how guarded I can be sometimes about things. How guarded I can be. And I think before I just thought it was normal. Take it off. So the question's about feelings, and just that I've started to notice that I can be guarded about feelings sometimes, and the possibility that I might not be super healthy spiritually to do that. One example is my father passed away when I was like 26, and we went through the grieving process, and I think I felt there was closure around that, but I have noticed that I can't listen to songs that were played in my home when I was growing up, and I'll just turn them off, or I'll ask someone to turn them off. Recently I thought, well, I know it hurts to listen to them, and I wonder I wonder about it not being healthy, and the idea of suppressing feelings, or maybe for fear that I'll hold on to it and I won't be able to get over it. And so then I started noticing that I do that quite a lot. Even the news, like you said, I am one who will not watch the news. And I do have a little bit of anxiety, so there's something about that, but I started to notice it more and more, that I guard my heart a lot, and I wonder, how do you let stuff in, how does it pass? Idea of the feeling coming and you feel it and then it passes.
Thank you for asking that question, Eloisa. Let's all pray together that a good answer comes, because it's what you're really asking is such a deep question, and honestly the essence of the path, which is, how do we open our hearts? I know it doesn't sound like this right away, and I'll backtrack and honor the feelings of it, but for right now, the question that you're asking is, how do I truly expand in every way and yet take all of the energy this sea of energy that we're all in, where very certainly loving, uplifting, wonderful things can happen, but also very painful things can happen, so that we don't either protect ourselves from it, therefore really distancing ourselves from the entire experience of a human incarnation and the possibility that exists here for spiritual growth. If we protect ourselves, that's what we're doing. And yet, if we open ourselves to all of what life brings, mostly relationships, whether they are partnerships, whether they're with our children, our parents, people we work with, anytime we're relating to people, the possibility of the pain that comes with that. And the question is, how do we take that energy and not either do this or get stuck with the pain, so that we walk around being very emotional, often very sad. But the truth is, if we're very emotional and giddy with the happy moments, it's not actually much better for us spiritually. It feels better in the moment. We think it's better. We can love somebody and be enthusiastic. We can love a good meal. We can just be excited about a trip, or it just goes on and on. But you remember even that story when Swamiji was going on a ski trip actually, but he had just gotten this van, I think it was, and he loved the van, and he knew right away that it was not the best thing, that he felt, attached would be maybe too strong, but he knew. He said, knowing everything needs to come back to center, to zero, as he would often say, that he felt too much excitement about the van, and then they had the accident. Literally within an hour of that thought for him. All by way of saying, emotion is emotion. We feel it as good or bad based on our human reactions. But the question that you're asking right now, which is twofold. Number one, my father died when I was 26 years old, and still, I know it's at least a few years later, I'm not going to ask you your age, but it's a fair number of years later where thoughts of him like that will bring you to tears, or the idea of music, and it probably conjures up other painful experiences, even unconsciously. So it makes us cry or avoid, which is, I don't know if you used that word just now, but you did use it with me before when we were talking, to become avoidant or to want to suppress. And you cannot deny your feelings. If you just deny your feelings, if you just repress them, they come up in very difficult ways. And it's like a volcano inside of us, and we don't know what to do with it. And I think it's a big part of the human condition. I've said it before. I think it's particularly difficult for men, where it's not at all a part of their training to actually feel something in the moment, feel it, even if it's painful, and then through our teachings, and this is why there's not a great answer in the moment, because I can't say to anybody, oh, just do this and you will quit avoiding feeling something. It really takes learning how to transform energy, because that's what you're talking about. It is from emotion to devotion, and it gets hard in the heart chakra but it's also the most rewarding because it is in the heart chakra where we begin energetically in our astral spine. Believe me, I know this is not solving your problem right now, but I have to say it to give the full answer. This is such an important chakra for being stuck out in the world by being too emotional. It's such an intense human trait, and it keeps us out. Whereas if we can find the ways to offer that energy up to the point between the eyebrows, we talk about this all the time, then it becomes devotional. It becomes about God and not about the human condition. Now that's very hard. It's very challenging. So depending on who the person is, I might say to them, chant more. Just chant more. Or sit in front of Master's picture, look right into his eyes and celebrate your father's life. And celebrate his death in that he's free. I'm not trying to be mean and deny your feelings or anybody's feelings. I would never do that. But if we don't try and lift them, then we are where we are. Then we are emotional, very emotional beings. And it makes everything in life, everything, not just more challenging, but really virtually impossible. Because you can't get over things emotionally. Yesterday, when I was driving home from this trip I was just on, I was asking my friend about two of her friends who I've been very connected with over the years, but I don't stay in touch with them. They each went through very difficult experiences this year. One was a cancer, and it was a very challenging kind of cancer, and a cancer that she had gone to many doctors and kept saying, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about something on the back of her tongue. And 4 times or more, she was just written off. And it turned out to be a very bad oral cancer. They're very difficult, anyway, without going into them. And another woman who got extremely bad COVID, lived with pneumonia for about 6 months, had to go through pulmonary rehab. I mean, she's a fraction of what she used to be, even nine months later. Very dear friend of ours, really. And I was saying to my friend, listening to these are really painful stories. Lives changed. The price tag has been huge. I don't need to go into it. But these are two very emotional beings. I know them. It's the way they live their life. They find their happiness in their emotion. Dancing and singing, looks uplifted, but they're very emotional. And I could feel like not only at a feeling level, but at a knowing level. It just came to me how much more difficult the recovery. They're very painful experiences. I would never minimize it, but they can't recover fully. They cannot, because they're stuck. And now let's just forget about these two people, but in these instances, families get stuck, friends get stuck with, oh my God, that is so awful. You poor thing, this is just terrible. Nobody could get over it. It would be difficult for every. But 9 months later, a year later, and soon it's many years later, and we're still with the same feeling, because that's what happens. You can't heal, you can't solve a problem at the level that it's created. You have to uplift that energy. So the answer is really what you already know. but to put it into conscious practice, to open our hearts to the divine with everything, knowing nothing can happen to any of us that isn't perfect. Nothing. Even when it's the most awful thing that we can imagine, which is what's happening. I don't know that you would say that about your life in that way, but we see it all around. I watch the news. I try and watch the news once a day for about a half hour. I want to know what's going on. But I don't hold on to it. Right now, I can't watch the news because I feel it in my heart. I can't let go of what I'm feeling for a lot of these people is not what they need to heal. So I can't go there. It's better that I meditate those extra 30 minutes. But I think specifically we each need to look for ways. Maybe it's singing. I mean, literally, like joining the choir. I don't know how much longer our choir is going to be able to sing right now. We'll have to see what's going to go on with that. But there will be a choir, there will be music. Chanting, learning to play an instrument, and sitting in front of your altar and loving God and putting your father's, I'm just using it because you said it as an example, your father's picture there, your cancer there, your COVID there, your whatever it is, offer it to God because it came to us for a reason. And ultimately, the reason that everything is handed to us is to give us a perfect opportunity, perfect, like a custom-made event to allow us to feel God's presence in our lives and to go there. So the answer isn't simple, or we'd all be self-realized, is the truth. But what else would we do? I mean, I know you, but everybody who's watching right now, everybody who's here, we're here ready for the hard work because we've come to this point. Our tests will not be easy, but if we can say, thank you for bringing this to me, really follow Swamiji's example. He did it again and again. And it was always about Master and God for him. And we can do that. But it takes great effort. It's just exactly the thought that I came in here with today. Everything on the path takes a lot of effort, but the greater the effort that we put in, the greater the reward. And the reward isn't some giddy moment of happiness, but it's suddenly realizing one day, you know, I really don't get as emotional or as whatever. It was very hot in Yosemite right now. And my friend Donna is very heat sensitive. And she talked about the heat a lot until I had to forbid it. It's hot. We're not going to talk about it anymore. She said to me, aren't you hot? I said, nope, I don't feel hot. She said, how could that be? I said, make a decision to not be hot. Sounds like a silly example, but it's not. It's the next moment of deciding that we will go into any situation that comes to us without all of the emotional baggage, without all of the reactivity. And it's a hard answer, but it's the correct answer. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not, but I am. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about sleep. Yeah, I was just telling you, I couldn't sleep until about 2 in the morning. And I thought, oh, well, I just won't go tomorrow, even though I really wanted to be here. And then I offered it up to Master, and at 6:50, my eyes opened wide, and I said, oh, I guess I'm going. And I do feel the lack of sleep, but I don't feel sleepy. I feel remarkably okay for as little sleep as I got. And so I know for myself I have a big dependency maybe on the idea, or attachment to the idea, of needing a good 8-hour long rest, or I won't be okay for whatever is to come. So can you talk about, I guess I don't have a more specific question, but just sleep, and maybe not needing it as much as like the flow of energy, and how to get it in other ways?
A very dear friend, she actually lives in our community, and most of you won't know this, but the insomnia that comes with menopause is the hardest insomnia to treat. It's almost impossible. So women lose estrogen and they can't fall asleep. It's strange. And the only way to put them to sleep is to give them estrogen, which of course mostly for some good reasons we don't want to do or we can't do, having a lot to do with cancers of the various female organs. It's a bad trick that Master played, that God himself has played on us. But I remember this friend of ours was going through menopause, and she literally couldn't sleep. I mean, for nights and nights, she just wouldn't sleep. Then she would pass out one night, and then she'd be awake for a week. And one day she was going to work. She told me this story later, and she said to herself, do I actually feel tired? And then she said, I don't feel tired. And then she said to herself, so why am I going to keep worrying about not sleeping? And she literally was able to let it go and do great, go in and put in these long work days and live the whole rest of her life. We are, many of us, very attached to the notion of sleep. And of course, most of us in this human condition need some sleep. Of course we do. I'm not being silly. But most of us are getting some sleep. Most of us, the more we begin to rely on energy rather than that kind of unconscious state of rest, but go into conscious states of rest, even by bringing it to mind. This is why that affirmation, within me lies the energy to accomplish all that I will to do. Behind my every act is God's infinite power. Most of us, if we think about it, meditate on it, pray about it, probably don't need 8 hours sleep, even though I know I'm going against a lot of what medicine. But most of these people who are involved in the studies and doing the studies, they're not meditating an hour or two a day. They're not tapping into an infinite source. And we are. And we have to remember that. So I don't know what you're feeling, and most of you cannot see Suryani's eyes, but they're her eyes. We all know her eyes. They're bright, they're big, they're awake. She's sitting here with great energy. She meditated for an hour, I think without falling asleep. She's given me the thumbs up. So again, I'm not being silly. Part of we have to ask ourselves why we can't sleep, usually because we're carrying our days into the night. And I don't actually want to talk about sleep disturbances because they're many, they're varied, they're difficult. But almost, or in many instances, it's something that we're doing in our lives. And now there's sleep clinics where people can be trained to sleep better, to not eat certain foods later in the day, to not watch the news at 11 at night, or even have a television on in your bedroom, or lift up your phone or your tablet right before you go to sleep. There's a lot about it, but what's interesting about this question is our attachment to sleep. And when we say, I'm of the mind that I need 8 hours sleep or I'm not going to do well, you will need 8 hours sleep or you won't do well. That's exactly what will happen. I'm trying to remember right now the story. Oh, because I can't bring it up, but it's one of our readings from Rays that we do every year. But as soon as the devotee says to Master, oh, but I won't be able to do that, will I? I'm sure many of you now remember the story that I can't, but it doesn't matter. Then Master says no, because you have that thought. Our thoughts are so important. So when I can't sleep, I usually, and I just get up out of bed for a while if I can't, because laying there is very difficult. And I put on my headphones or whatever they're called, I forget. Those ear pods, ear what? Yeah, whatever they are, forgive me. And so I'm quiet and I listen to instrumental music of Swamiji's. I don't put words in my head that I'm going to be thinking about. And if I don't sleep, I don't sleep. And I never had a sleeping problem, but in the last couple of years, I'll often wake up at 2. And you know, there are times you just wake up and you go, that's it. I'm not going back to bed. You just know. Other times you think you'll do some things and you'll make it back to sleep. But often between 2 and 3, I'm awake. And then I say to myself, then you'll need to be awake and ready. Because the truth is, if we're tuned in and connected enough, we don't need sleep. We need sleep until we can get there, and we need to be realistic. But I wouldn't affirm, I need this, I need that, or I would start affirming, I am energy. Energy doesn't get tired. It's energy. And take that with us into the day, because otherwise we make ourselves sleepy. So, mindset. And again, I realize we need to sleep. We are not the masters who never sleep. At least I'm not. Probably most of us aren't. So most of us need some sleep, but most of us could do much better than we think with less sleep than we get. So we have to change our minds. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any questions? Yes.
This is a question from online. The first of the yamas is practicing ahimsa or non-violence even in our thoughts about others. Sure. Or can you increase the volume? Is this better? Yeah. The first of the yamas is practicing ahimsa or non-violence even in our thoughts about others. How does one overcome guilt of past, of having not so kind thoughts about other people who were difficult to us?
That's another very good question. Guilt is an enormous waste of energy. I mean, that's really the truth. No good ever comes from feeling guilty, ever. And I realize that's not easy to get rid of it, but I feel this when I'm teaching teaching a class called Emotions. What's the name of that class? That book? Secrets of Emotional Healing. Yeah, and it's brilliant. It's a secret a day, the way Swamiji wrote his secrets books for a month. And every feeling that comes up, every feeling, I feel such compassion for people, all of us. There's not a feeling in the book that we all haven't felt. And I find myself in every one of those classes, like right now about guilt, which by the way we did talk about in the secrets class already, wanting to take a moment to honor the difficulty of that, like how to not feel guilty. I said to my friend yesterday, I said, wow, I feel like if I'm not careful, this is what I said to her, if I'm not careful and if I'm not very mindful, it's a moment in time where I could experience something akin to survivor's guilt, because people are suffering so much in the world right now, and I'm not. I mean, I could sit here and complain for a long time if I wanted to about things, many things, but of course I wouldn't. I mean, I don't, even when I'm not right here, but I'm not suffering, and I feel I have to just be perfectly okay with the fact that karmically, that's not mine. All of what feels like there's so much suffering in the world right now, and it's just touching my heart. So I said, whoa, I need to be very thoughtful about this and feel strong and powerful and offer prayers and energy and money and time in certain ways, in my ways, the ways that come to me, to help the world, not to feel terrible that I'm in a position to do that. Guilt gets us, and it never serves us or the people that we feel guilty about, ever. What serves them and what serves us is to begin to pray, meditate, consciously bring that energy up into the heart in loving, compassionate ways. I remember one time I was in a seclusion. This was not all that long ago, maybe 10 years. And I wrote down everybody's name that I could remember of people that I thought I'd hurt in the world. And it was unfortunately quite a list, but there it was. And I offered it in a very long meditation. I was in seclusion, and they come more easily, but that's not the point. It doesn't need to be long. You could do a fire ceremony. You could do a little ceremony in front of your altar. You can do it however you want to do it. Offer those people up to God and ask God to love them and take care of them, both through you but always knowing that it's God's energy. There's no mistakes. We should not look backwards. It will not serve us, other than something like this, where we can learn and say, oh, I see now. No, that guilt's not what I need to do. What I need to do is love all of those people, send love to them consciously, thoughtfully. And even if you can't love them completely, even if somebody, you just can't. We're only as grown up as we are spiritually. That's the truth. But we can always say and mean it, Master, Divine Mother, please take care of these people. You love them. You love them. And as much as possible, love them through me. So we're moving forward. What we've done, we've done. And I don't forget the things that I've done to people, but I'm doing as much as I can do to not agonize over it. And one important piece of that, so we're not just letting ourselves off the hook. That doesn't help. We have to transform that energy. But we might also remember it's their karma too. whatever has happened, whatever thoughts have gone from you to them, which of course are powerful, their thoughts are as meaningful as any action, but it is also their karma. And they have the opportunity to also grow through it spiritually. So as much as possible, just let go of it by offering it up, not suppressing it. It's the same thing that Eloisa was talking about. Suppression cannot work. It will never work. But owning it, uplifting it, being with God with it, that works for all of, even for our current angers, our current pain. So.
Yeah. We are made of spirit and return to spirit. One of the entanglements is the body. Why do great saints like Master and Sri Yukteswar leave their bodies here with us? There is great power in being proximate to where their mortal coils lay. Masters can return in any shape or in any form through any body. But to me it suggests like there is a universal benefit to mankind that they see in not cremating that body but letting posterity gain through this. Is there anything deeper here that we should intuit? Any thoughts or remarks on the physical body?
I am going to ask you, that's a long question, and a couple of words I miss. So I want to make sure that I'm answering, at least speaking to. So could you read it one more time slowly and enunciating?
I'll just read the questions part.
Can I hear the part about the great saints? Because
Sure.
You said they're asking, why do the great saints leave us with their body?
Yeah. While we are made of spirit and return to spirit, and body is an entanglement, why do great saints leave their bodies here with us? And then the person says, I understand there is benefit to it. And he's asking if there's something greater for this world itself by their body still being here with us.
Okay, thank you. That's good. It was all, whoever sent that, very thoughtful. So thank you, but it's a lot to absorb. I don't know if how many of you have ever gone to a place where a great saint's body still exists, and you can stand in that spot and look at that physical presence. What's happened for me when that's happened, and I've seen the bodies of several saints. What's that word? When the bodies last, what's the word? Anybody know? I can't, okay. There's a word for when the body does not decay, it doesn't leave. And mostly with these bodies, when the saints leave, they're not, I've never seen a body that looks exactly like the human body looked. They've changed a little color, this, that, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it's instantly uplifting. It's a profound experience. I mean, people stand in line for hours to see these, the bodies of the saints. Incorrupt, thank you, that's the word, that are incorrupt. And if you just hold that notion, because of course what you're saying is right, I mean, with the saints, it's an interesting thing. If you think about Master, we could say he's not in that body, and he's not, but he is, because he's everywhere. And that's why, when he came back to Dayamata and said, why would you cry? I'm not gone, or I'm not in that body, and yet he's in every particle of being, because that's what spirit is. And for us, in this human condition, so used to relating to everything in a physical form. When you come near those bodies, it's like sitting in a place where, why do we go to that place where Master left his body? Why do people want to go to Calcutta and meditate exactly where he meditated? We know he's everywhere, but somehow we tune in in a much deeper, less distracted way when we are in those places where energetically and it has to do with us, but we can contact the spirit of that being in a way that we might not otherwise. Taking a walk through the park, it's different. You think of Master, you love Master, you might even have a profound experience of Master. But when you go to where his body is and you put your head in on the crypt there, and you lean against it, and you just feel a different kind of energy, even if it's a figment of our imagination. Let's say that's it. Let's say he didn't leave little bits more of his energy anywhere. It's profound. And I think it's a gift that they give us so that we can remember spirit everywhere, even though we're doing it through a physical form. That's what, that reading in the Gita where Arjuna asks, what's the better way to worship you? With form or without form. And Krishna says, how many people can worship me without form? We need a form. God himself tells Arjuna, you need a form. You need that I-thou relationship. So those incorrupt bodies are a tremendous gift for us, a place and a way to really worship. And I don't know what Master would say, unless he's speaking through me right now, but if he could appear right here. But I know for certain that it's profound being in the presence of those bodies, spiritually profound, spiritually uplifting. I have sat in that room where Master's crypt is many times now with groups, and I can say that to the person, people have a transformational experience in that room. And how long it lasts, what it does. But I always think our spiritual growth is like, we're just building. Every little bit counts. So as many times as we could get to Master's crypt, we should. I'm trying to remember now who are all of the incorrupt saints that I saw in Europe, but I can't remember. Is Padre Pio's body incorrupt? Yes, so Padre Pio's one of them, and maybe there's one of the St. Joseph's. Anyway, I can't exactly remember, but there was one of the female saints. I know her body's still there. It's extraordinary. So it must be that there's some way that they have of knowingly sharing themselves with us, and also just letting us see their spiritual power. Look at this. Body doesn't have to decay. Nothing has to happen. It's all spirit. It can come, it can go. Doesn't matter. So I hope that answers your question.
The teachings tell us, live for God alone and to make Him your only reality. How do we translate this into our daily householder life? When we have jobs, family, worldly responsibilities, how do we live for God alone?
This question comes up all the time. It's probably been in every Q&A that I've done, and many that I haven't done, I'm sure, but it's a very important question because Ananda itself is based on this concept of the householder. I mean, it's a lot of why these communities exist. Master knew that people needed spiritual communities, and I don't mean just those of us who live in the community. I mean the community at large that includes everybody, all of you. The mistake that we make, and it's totally understandable, is that the way to be with God, the way to grow spiritually, is by doing some spiritual practice, which of course it is. So we get very spiritual when we sit to meditate, or maybe we get very spiritual when we're creating a meal that the whole community is going to eat. And it's an important thing to do. I mean, in India, they take part of that meal or some food, they put it on an altar, they call it prasad, it's blessed. I mean, through food, that we can bless people. It's a spiritual practice, cooking, or maybe if you're singing in the choir, that's beautiful. But the mistake that we all make is that when we move out into the world, something's different or it changes. And because of that, we lose touch with God, and we think we're not living for God alone. But again, if we hold it differently, if we change our mind, you know, I always come back to that saying. Sai Ganesh was just talking about it in Raja Yoga because he gave this first class. And it's either there or it's in the chapter on energy, but it doesn't matter. Somewhere, Swamiji writes, if you take these teachings from Raja Yoga, which is all of our teachings, it's the royal yoga, it's what we're doing. And we compress it into 14 weeks and we share it with people, but it's the life of a yogi on their way to self-realization. Swamiji says, if you actually take this seriously, if you mean it, if you really want to know yoga means to become a yogi, it will take a complete revolution of the mind. I always get confused. He did say revolution, but I always wanted to say revelation. It does take that too. Meaning, he says it. Your mind will not see things the same way. It won't think the same way. It won't take in any of the sensory input the same way. We change our minds. It's not a simple phrase. It's everything. It's the spiritual path. And that's what we need to do as householders or as working people. All of us, everybody, every person. I was just running through people that I know living in community, in the congregation. Who of us doesn't have challenges? People in our life that are great for our sadhana because they're difficult. And if they become our sadhana, means open our heart, practice loving them, practice seeing them as God. If we don't go to work, but we go to serve God in everything we do, what we do doesn't matter. The attitude that we do it with matters. Same thing with our friends, with our partners, with people in our community who wouldn't be our friends if they weren't in the community. We might not step out and say, gee, I'd love to spend a lot of time with that person, because we're limited. We're still limited. And what we're trying to do is, again, take every opportunity to welcome spiritual growth in every way that we can. And boy, I don't know that there's anything much richer other than if we can actually sit and meditate deeply, which is hard. But if we can do that, that's richer. Otherwise, our bumping into all of these different people, experiences, they're all opportunities for us. So we can't keep saying, how can I live for God alone when I have to go to work? You know, if you look at a couple who's just had a baby, and let's say the baby's 3 months old, what do they see when they see that baby? Or what do they feel? Their hearts open, they feel inspired. The baby, of course, is still closer to God than they are. So part of that's the gift. That soul is still remembering more than we remember. But if we can grab that kind of a moment, or a puppy, I mean, literally, a new puppy, you don't judge the puppy. No matter what the puppy does, it can tear up your favorite shoe. It can make a mess all over your house. It's a puppy. You love it. You love a baby. You see it all as an opportunity to love, not as an opportunity to be judgmental, to feel overworked, to dislike certain people. Of course, we all do that. But the point is, our lives are here for us to learn to not do that. And the more evolved we are, the harder the tests are, and the closer we are to people, very often, the more difficult it is. Your partner, your children, your parents can be very hard to just see them without judgment because they have such an impact on our lives. I was just on this beautiful trip. I drove up one day. I spent 2 days in Yosemite, up in the high country, and I drove home the next day. It wasn't a long trip, but it was quiet. The park is almost empty. Almost. I mean, a few hundred people I saw. It's nothing when you're up in Tuolumne Meadows and roaming around up there. No traffic on the road. Bright blue skies up there. Perfect temperature, beautiful mountain lakes to dive into and swim into. Perfect, perfect. Deep meditations. And I drive home and I open the door and say hello to Barry, my partner, for those of you that don't know. And he hasn't been in Yosemite. He hasn't been feeling that much closer to God because he's up out of this vibration. He's right in this vibration, with all of the problems, issues, difficulties, things that have confronted him. And he wanted to tell me about them right away as we were carrying my suitcases in. It's like, whoa, okay, all right, just like that. Take a deep breath, Shanti. Breathe with those vibrations. You are still with God. You are looking at God. This is God having a different experience than you are. But it sounds small, but you know, it was like that. Not, hi, sweetheart, how was your trip? Tell me about it. Let's do a little transition here. Nope, was not like that. It would be very easy to get angry. I mean, think about it. It would be very easy to say, what's wrong with you? Why are you bombarding me with all of this? Why are you in such a terrible mood? Your house didn't burn down, you know, you're not in all that smoke. I could go on and on. Look at the problems that you think you have. They're not problems. Not so for him. Problems. Now they're my problems. Can I love him? Do I see God in him? Okay. It's no different than being in Yosemite, really. It's not. It's easier for me in Yosemite, but that just speaks to my limitation in a way. So, I hope that answers your question.
I have a friend who is facing a serious karmic test. He thinks it's a freak accident, a cruel tragedy, not something to introspect about and consider what he did to draw this condition to him. I think there are some serious lessons in it that he may need to face. How ought I to pray for him or be a supportive friend?
Well, praying for him is being a supportive friend. So that's the first thing. And in many instances, that's the biggest gift we have to give people. Because, Krishna said it. He said, out of 1,000, one will seek me. Think of it. Actually, often I think it's less than that, but I'm going to believe Krishna. Most people are not yet in a place where they can see how their magnetism drew right to them what they're living with. It's very, very difficult. And I think part of the human condition, literally, comes in with this territory, that the vast majority of people in the world, if they're facing a crisis, want to blame somebody. Somehow, it makes it easier to blame somebody else. Even if it's just, even if it's something like suddenly a child dies. So you can't really blame somebody if that happens. Unless it's a car accident or something like that. But things happen where there's not another person. A lot of those people just get angry with God. And there's no telling them this unless they ask for it. And very, very few people do in the middle of a serious crisis. So I feel often that the best thing to offer people are prayers and our love. Unless they say to you, help me see this differently. Unless they give you permission to walk in that way, don't. This is why Swamiji dedicated a whole week in our Sunday services. So it's one of 52 opportunities we get to dive deeply into a topic with a deep spiritual lesson. 52 is not a lot, and he didn't change it every year. We do it every year, the same lessons. And one of them is, don't pass pearls before swine. And it's brilliant, of course. It's masterful. Jesus said it. And what it really means is, don't try and take these teachings and even offer them to somebody who has no capacity to receive them. It doesn't work. I'm actually also speaking from personal experience. I've tried it too many times. So prayer and love, just sometimes we have to sit with people and listen to the same story over and over, taking no responsibility. I've seen, of course, my work, as a physician, as a minister, as a spiritual counselor, I've seen people who have found partners who are brutal partners, not just once or twice, but even 3 times. Same partner, different name, different time and space, same exact qualities, who have no idea that they're drawing that to them. It's very hard to take full responsibility for everything in our lives. It's very hard, even for us. So, unless they invite you, don't try and tell them anything that's very hurtful. People feel unseen, they feel misunderstood. It takes them diving deeper into, nobody could understand this. Nobody could imagine this. Of course we can, but don't push. That's what I would say. Just be in your heart with them.
The fear of death bothers me more often than I'd like to admit. Even though I believe that we don't end at death, the idea of pain, the loss, and even the concept of having to reincarnate to suffer all over again is daunting to me. Will I have to face all the same tests over again?
That's both a personal and a completely impersonal question. And of course, I don't know who's asking it, and that's better. But, you know, I had a profound experience that I've shared, so you've all heard it. But it's been a few months, so I'll tell you. I don't think it was a dream. I actually don't. I think in a certain way, Master came to me, not in a vision or in person. But I was saying, I've worked really pretty hard in this life to make spiritual progress. I mean, it sounds harder than it's been. Of course, it's been a joy, but I've focused on it. I'm still focusing on it. I know exactly who I am. I see myself clearly. I see mistakes I've made. I see mistakes I'm still making. I see what's come through me into the world. I mean, just saying it's been a big life, this incarnation. And somehow Master was there, and I was saying to him, please help me. I don't know if I've ever been here before, meaning as much spiritual progress as I've made. Not that I can't see what's left, but here. And I don't want to have to be reborn and start at the beginning. I'd like to be here and make all the progress I can and then come back and move on. And Master said to me, without judgment, I felt with all the love in the world, he said to me, oh, you've been here before. And it was like, oh no. You know, it was really said to me, don't waste a moment. Make as much spiritual progress as you can in this life. And wherever anybody is, age-wise, spiritually, we're here because we still have room to grow. And let's not let ourselves off any hooks. So we do that, we start justifying things. And, you know, even as of yesterday, I was doing that. But the minute I see it, I say to myself, don't do it. Don't. You don't have time to waste doing that. So that's part of an answer to your question, and that is maybe some of us will have an experience of samadhi and then go on to attain full self-realization in this life. Swamiji said it's possible. He said we could all attain, we could all become Jivan Muktas. That's a lot of growth. That is really great. That's right there. He said it's possible. So the first part of that is, let's go for it. Let's not get confused about what we're doing here. Not even negative things, but even those of us who are serving all the time, our life through some blessing. I felt that way as a physician, though. It doesn't need to be in the temple. But what if we start thinking, and I wrote this in a letter to our staff yesterday, which I didn't hit send yet, so Lakshmi and Sai Ganesh get a preview of coming attractions. But I was saying to them, let's all help each other remember that we're not just doing what we're doing to complete jobs here, there, here, there. We're a staff. Let's bring our energy together in very positive ways, because that sends a big vibration out to the whole congregation. The letters said more, but the point is, it's very easy to see each next thing that we're doing because it's good. What we're doing is good, but as just something we need to accomplish. But that's not what it is. It's an opportunity to grow spiritually while we're doing that and to help others grow. So part of the answer is do everything you can do to make as much spiritual progress as you can make in this life. Chances are most of us are going to be back. But we don't lose ground. Master wasn't saying to me, oh, you've been here before because you didn't learn anything. This is a pretty blessed incarnation. But he was saying it to me to wake me up, to say, keep moving. You're in a position to learn so much right now, but we all are. We all are. The other thing about the fear of pain and of actually leaving, that's much more difficult to talk about because it's the primary fear in everybody's life. Fear of being rejected is huge, of course, but our fear of death is enormous. And I don't really know exactly what to say, but I'll share what I do. And that is, I spend a good amount of time talking to myself, reminding myself that all of the masters tell us nothing changes when we die. Nothing. They're not lying to us. They're not trying to trick us. They're not trying to lessen the load. They don't do that. They don't intervene in that way. They're simply here to share the truth. And this is one of the truths. Nothing happens. It's a transition. The spirit just keeps going. And so even though we are so attached to these bodies and we don't want them to hurt, and we could go on and on, I've watched many people go through what should be very painful, physically painful experiences, and they're not, because they don't bring their awareness to the level of the body. They're at the level of spirit, and they are in the transition. And I remind myself of that. I've watched many people die. I watched Leela go, the woman who was Swamiji's cook for many, many, many years. I watched Maria Warner go, who was a devotee for the longest time, who left her husband with the message. Don't get all emotional here. She said it beautifully in 3 lines. Only the last one comes to mind right now. Live the teachings. Beautiful. That's how she died. We watched Swamiji go, but we've watched people like us go, and I always say, remember this. This is how you want to leave. Peacefully, easily, knowing nothing changes. We're on a journey. We're just headed back to God realization. And nothing about this body itself is helping us. It's a vehicle. It's like hitchhiking cross country. You might get into 10 vehicles. Doesn't matter when you leave them. You're still headed from New York to San Francisco. And you'll get there. You will get there, but it might take many rides. And I just tell myself that's what's happening. And I tell myself all the time, don't be afraid, Shanti. Don't be afraid. Nothing happens except you're that much closer to God. And I have no other advice for that fear because it's planted in us. But we can begin to practice letting it go. And, I think it helps. I could share a lot of moments of my life with you when I thought maybe I was dying. And I just went right into that mindset because I've been practicing it. And I could just feel the fear go, okay, is this the moment? Okay. I don't know what it's actually going to be like for me, but I know that in this moment, at this age, where I could go any moment, I mean, we could all go any moment, but a little more likely for me, I don't sit with fear. I've just kept letting go, kept growing spiritually. Just do the best we can and don't get mad at ourselves for the mistakes that we make. That's another big black hole of energy. Blame ourselves now.
How to help someone who loves to dwell on a problem instead of focusing on the happiness in their life. The person does not wish to come out of depression.
You know, I had a very dear friend who was telling me a story some months ago now, I think, about lifelong friends of his. And one of them was very depressed, and there was this issue. If I don't go and see him and spend certain time with him, he might kill himself. This is what my friend told me. And it just came to me like, and so the whole point is, has someone made as much spiritual progress as they can in this life? And I've said it, I don't want to just repeat everything I've said. We can only help people who want to be helped. That's very painful for us at times because it is the nature of joy to want to share itself. You just look at somebody you love and you can't believe that they're looking at you, they're seeing your life and how much more uplifted it is on this path. I've had several people say to me, boy, I wish I could be like you. And I say, you can. You know, there's nothing special here. You just turn around and look at life differently. But from their perspective, I have something they don't have. It's not the truth, except probably a lot of good karma right now. But I mean, we just can't help people who don't want to be helped. And that is painful for us. And honestly, there's not many more words. Again, prayer, love, and then, in this instance of this friend, I felt my biggest job was to say, you cannot feel guilty if they commit suicide. That's their choice. Maybe this life is over for them. You cannot let them bring you down to where they are. That's what depression is, a very powerful thing, and I say this with a lot of compassion, but it does like it when somebody comes and meets them where they are, rather than, some people just can't. They can't get out of it. They can't lift themselves at all. Pray. Truthfully, you just pray for them.
There were some serious life events that happened not too long ago. Life events. There is a part of me that feels I should have handled things differently. Although I didn't make any serious mistakes, I wish I had done something else. My lack of ability to cope with what happened and my own guilt are troubling me deeply. What can I do to overcome?
Oh, it's interesting, the question that you're asking and the experience that you're having. Isn't it interesting, just in a way, how much we share in this human condition? How easy it is to feel guilty or as if we're not good enough. I'm just saying it because there was a question not that long ago about guilt, even about negative thoughts. And there is one thing that we know for certain, absolutely for certain. We can't go back in time and do it again. Ever. We just, if we were master, I guess we could, but we're not, and we can't. So we have to really give ourselves room to be human, to know without a doubt that we will make what we're calling mistakes. I think, I've told you this, I have a sign that I picked up. I was 13 years old when I bought it. And it says, the difference between a stumbling block and a stepping stone is how you use it. And it's brilliant because it's all of life, isn't it? It's exactly what we're talking about. This is a stepping stone. It's not, don't let it be a stumbling block. Don't let it take you down. That's the only thing guilt does. And people have done some very, very horrible things. Many. I don't know what any of the life circumstances are that we're talking about here, and always, I feel, always, in every, I worked in the field of chemical dependency, many of you know that. I was a general internist, but I had a little niche in my practice that was specifically for addicts and alcoholics. And when people are using, they do some very, very horrible things. We've all seen it in the movies. I've seen it in real life. I met some very beautiful souls, too, in this instance that I'm about to tell you. Very beautiful souls who I knew had killed somebody. They knew they had killed somebody years before, but they did it. They did it to get money and drugs. Imagine living with that. One of these people came into recovery, went on to start very successful drug and alcohol program, probably served thousands of people. That's what we do. We just keep putting one foot in front of the other on what can be a very difficult path. Whatever the difficulty is for us in the moment. And I mean this really because if I had allowed myself to stay with the anger that popped up for me last night when that door opened, it was an immediate kind of like, really? I mean, how could you greet me like this? And I felt that for an instant. Then I said to myself, if you do that, you will blame Barry for your loss of peace. If you don't do that, you won't lose your inner peace. And that thought went through my mind, and it was truth. So to me, in that moment, that was spiritual progress. Is it a big deal? Of course not. It's nothing like what people are going through. But each of us has our spiritual tests where we have them. And if we can learn and grow and move on, that's what God wants of us. God doesn't want us to suffer. That is so, when I left my first husband, well, forgive me, it's embarrassing. Not my first husband, my second husband. Barry, another Barry, who many of you have heard me talk about. We just adored each other, and I left in not a good way. I just left. And this story is not important. What is important is that for 3 years, I sat in front of my altar, promising God that I would not let myself feel happiness or joy until Barry did, because he was very hurt by the separation. 3 years. Finally, a voice came to me, literally, Shanti, do you think this is what God wants? And it was so absurd when I saw it. What was my suffering, my guilt, my throwing myself in front of the altar. I was never quite that dramatic, but I did it anyway. I didn't throw myself, is what I mean. I sat there nicely and quietly, promising God. God doesn't want us to suffer. He wants us to keep coming towards Him. He wants us to keep moving closer to that light, that love, that wisdom, that unconditionally loving space until we are it, and then we love others with that love. That's all God wants. So, move on. See that you've been handed a stepping stone and use it. Use it well.
I have a hard time finding suitable employment, although I have been looking for a while. Suitable employment. I keep praying for it. I'm also wondering what my dharma is and what type of job is right for me. What is the right way to pray to Master for this? I do want to be employed, but I want to make sure it is the right spiritual dharma for me.
I think that's a beautiful prayer. And I think if it's genuine, you remember Swamiji used to tell us, don't just sit down in front of your altar and tell God, solve my problems or take care of me. He said, go to God with your question. Very specifically, he would do it with music when he wanted a certain bit of music to come. I want a piece of music that will elicit the feeling of, and he would say whatever it was or whatever his words were. And then he said the music would come. And he told us that not to show us what he could do. He told us that because he was telling us, this is what you too can do. I would just say, and sometimes it's very hard to wait, isn't it? Or to not impose our feelings. It's extremely hard. But as much as we can, to sit with God regularly and to mean it. You know, I remember there was an SRW just a few years ago, maybe a lot of you heard this. Krishna Das got up, he was speaking, he was giving a talk at SRW, and he said, Swamiji, not somebody, Swamiji said to him, well, you do pray, don't you? And he said, yes, sir. But then, for months, he said, some long period of time, I don't know if he said months, he was funny about it, but it wasn't only funny, he was telling the truth. He was saying to himself, I pray, don't I? Wait, do I pray? Like, do I pray ultimately the way Swamiji meant when he said to Krishna Das, are you praying? Not sitting in front of the altar, letting your mind wander and then coming back and go, but wait a minute, I was in the middle, yeah, help me find a job, or the right job. Pray deeply. It's hard to do, actually. I often find myself not praying deeply enough for things, answers that I need, or for others. And I'll say to myself, wait a minute, you didn't actually stop for a moment and ask God to really come to that soul? Just listing 10 names? No, stop. Really, let God know you mean it. Send your energy up. This is what I'm about me. But I would say it to you. You know, you seem very clear. The question you're asking is an uplifted, spiritually oriented and solution-oriented question. It's a beautiful question. What is my dharma? Where is the work that's right for me so that I can grow and serve from that place? So it's a beautiful question, and you just sit and ask God. And what I do when I have a very serious dilemma is I pray Then I meditate. And if the answer hasn't come clearly, I pray again. I pray from that place of just having meditated and allowed energy to flow in that upward way, and then pray. So, and when it's time, this is part of what pray believing means, that if you're sincerely asking God for, in this way, not like just for a new car or certainly to do damage to anybody, but when we pray for something that will be of spiritual benefit to us or others, in the right time the answer will come. It has to come. God does not want to ignore us either. So just pray knowing that you'll get your job. You'll get the right job when it's time. Be prepared. The right job may not be fun, but you'll get it.
I think of myself as a very loving and kind person. I always like to see the goodness in people. I recently realized that in my wish to support and love people, I sometimes also indulge them in their own delusions, rather than helping them see their way out of it. How can I change this in me?
Very good question. Really a very good question, and an issue that's real for all of us, whether everybody's aware of it or not. This desire that's in us to serve people, which is beautiful, of course, and particularly if we can lift it to a place of serving God in that person, literally, consciously serving God, is a beautiful quality. But very often we get mistaken, and we either consciously or unconsciously decide to meet people where they are emotionally and support that. And it looks like loving kindness. We maybe hold them too long. We offer them either pity or what we think is empathy or compassion for too long. It's a very human quality, but it's not a quality. I mean, you're right, you're asking this question that we want to stay with. It is very, very hard to offer people a true opportunity for growth in the appropriate way for that person, that varies, and allow them to make the choice about whether they want to grow or not. And you see this very often in couples, very often, where one or the other, with thinking that they're being very loving, supports the person to stay in their delusion. I see it all the time. It happens everywhere, but it's very common there. We learn to take care of each other. And it's very challenging. It's one thing with another adult, it's another thing when it's children. I mean, we have to be very conscious, but we offer people an opportunity to grow, and if they don't want it, then we bless them. But we don't get caught helping them, being part of how they feel comfortable where they are. And that takes practice and a real knowing in your heart, a real knowing of what truth and truly loving somebody is. Truly loving somebody is not feeling sorry for them or, as you're saying, embellishing their shortcomings. That's not loving. They will love you for it, but not only will they not grow, you will find yourself with your energy contracted. So it takes, I often say, I was such a great Jewish mother for so many decades. I just loved everybody. I held everybody. I was much nicer in a way. This is what I say. I'm not as nice now as I used to be. But part of what that means is I'm no longer interested in simply being that place where people just come for comfort where they are. I want to be near, I want to draw people to me who are interested in growing. And then, as many of you know, both in this room and out of this room, I'm a hugger. I love to hold people. I love to help people. But I'm stern about it now. And it's not a bad thing. It's just not all of that helping them wallow in whatever it is. It's being willing to say, here's a way out of it, or here's a way out of it. And if they don't want it, it's fine. But it takes incredible consciousness, conscientiousness, if that's a word, and then it takes some courage to do what is right, even though at times people will feel left by you. They will feel, again, unappreciated, unseen. They become very emotional. And that's okay. It's not our job to fix people. It's not. It's our job to put elevating energy out into the world and see who makes the choice to take it, use it, grow with it. And we can't be discouraged with the fact, and I really mean this, it's very early Dwapara Yuga, very early. And most people won't take what you're offering. They won't. They just stay. And that doesn't mean we turn our hearts off, though. We can continue to love them, but we don't continue to be part of the problem. We become part of the solution, and the choice is theirs. So I hope that's helpful, because there's an art that goes along with this. I mean, it's the art of communication, really. So we're not hurting people that they may feel hurt, which is what's tricky. We're not hurting them, but they may feel hurt. Nope, happy to be with you if you want to come and be with me. But I'd rather not live there anymore or help you stay there. So.
The last question. Although I know of and always meditate on God's love for me, I often find myself feeling lonely. I've tried various spiritual practices and tools and techniques I can think of, but the loneliness comes back to me, especially in the evenings when I'm by myself. What can I do to come out of it?
Again, of course, we know the answers intellectually, don't we? We understand that God is always with us, that He's the very best friend we could ever have, the one place in the world where we can count on unconditional love, playfulness, joyfulness. We've all probably experienced God in all of these ways. Yet, we're human beings. And the truth is, until we're realized, we need human companionship, most of us. Every once in a while, there are people who are born who are true hermits, or in a life they'll even feel themselves grow that way. But it doesn't matter if you're not. if you're somebody who's lonely in the evenings, and many people are, many people, then I think it's worth putting out energy to cultivate friendships with people who are not just like-minded, but spirit-minded, to do whatever it takes to involve yourself. So it may be a certain seva in the evening. It might be joining a class. It's doing whatever you need to do to not be alone as many evenings. I think when we do that, instead of trying to force ourselves into a situation where we think we shouldn't be lonely, we meditate, we may even really feel God's love in those moments, feel the love of God in our hearts. But when 7 o'clock comes and we have the whole evening ahead of us, we don't want to be alone. And if meditation doesn't do it, which is just fine, it's perfectly fine. There's a reason why we're in these bodies having the experiences that we're having. So I would say just find ways to be with other people that is uplifting. And again, that could be getting together with a friend and watching a movie. It doesn't need to be taking a spiritual class or, coming in and cleaning up the temple. It's not like that. It's making friends who will help you stay in the place that you want to stay, and choosing consciously who you're with, but making those relationships work. And even if they're not close friendships, if you can have activities with people that the activity itself is uplifting, I think we tend to be less lonely. There are very few people who can be alone every evening or a lot and not feel lonely. There are those people. And quite honestly, as we deepen our relationship with God, I do think we move to toward needing a little less human interaction. But I have friends who are beautiful, beautiful devotees for decades and decades, and they're social beings. They need to be with other people. They're better when they're with other people. So I don't think we ought to make an image of what our path should look like and then make ourselves step onto that path the way it is. We have to, this is one of the niyamas, is introspection. And it means really knowing where we are. It's a step on the spiritual path that every one of us has to take. Self-honesty. Where am I? Who am I? What do I need? Oh, that's what I need. Because as soon as we do that, we feel free. We do. It's uplifting, it's freeing to take what we need in the moment, but always make sure it's in a good direction. That the people that we're choosing or the activity that we're choosing are things that are not downward pulling. So, hope you can find people and do that, sort of work on making it happen. Okay, everyone. Wow, 2 hours just flies by. At least to me it did. So thank you all for being here. Those are wonderful questions. And it's a great joy to, I imagine for all of us, but to be in a position to leave room for at least part of an answer to come. There's always more. I always think when we do these Q&As that I'm looking out at everybody or all of you, and as soon as you hear how the person answers, something else comes to you. I know how that is. And you feel like, oh, I have another answer. And it's true. There's always more to it, but at least this is part of it, and it's uplifting. So thank you all. I feel blessed to be here.